wonder, bringing it to today, of course, there's the big debate around Pillar Two of AUKUS and hearing those whispering in the airs and the independent viewpoints you just alluded to there back in 2003. Do you think the government is getting those independent viewpoints today? What can we do to encourage more debate? Of course, I've seen you and Don Brash have written about it. But what must we do in this country to really elevate the debate on AUKUS and Pillar Two, and how it might affect New Zealand?
So, when I talk to some people in media, I know there's a feeling that Kiwis are just completely preoccupied by other things at the moment. You know, there's a lot of joblessness, a lot of stuff's coming at them. It's a new government which is a radical departure from the past in many ways, but it's a radical departure from the past on this. There's almost an unthinking, willingness to sign up to whatever the United States wants, and that is a concern to me. And these stories come thick and fast. For example, a New Zealand Navy tanker lamely limps behind an Australian destroyer through the Taiwan Strait in the last week or so. We're in those exercises in the West Philippine Sea, whether it's the same tanker or frigate, I don't know. There's been a lot of detail. We're with the US in landmine clearance exercises on a northern beach. Well, it's just endless, and AUKUS is part of this. What concerned me going back to the February ministerial between the New Zealand and Australian Foreign Affairs and Defence ministers was the invoking of ANZUS as the basis of the defence relationship with the United States. Well, this is ridiculous. We have had a closer defence relationship with Australia for a long time. We don't need to invoke ANZUS, but invoking ANZUS is a way of backdoor saying, oh, well, this is still relevant, and AUKUS then becomes another pillar. On AUKUS, I mean, the debate in Australia is I think getting much more coverage than here, partly because Australia risks losing its independent submarine capacity. Yeah. And there is a school of thought, as you heard when Hugh White came to New Zealand, that for the cost of nuclear submarines, which they may never get because the clause for the US to supply them has a huge waiver, yes, which is only if they can spare them themselves, and they can't build enough for themselves. But it's like buying a pig in a poke. You may eventually get 8 nuclear submarines, but for the money, you could have had many, many more conventionally powered submarines with potentially a program to turn them out of the Australian shipyards in Sydney and Melbourne. So in Australia, they see the real threat of AUKUS to their independent, to the extent that they have an independent defence and foreign policy, that they see it as losing their sovereign capacity to deploy an adequate submarine fleet. So all I would say to Kiwis is, have a very good look at this. We're being sold on the idea that Pillar 2 of AUKUS would give us access to a whole lot of sophisticated military technologies. Well, hello, do we need them?
Yes.
Can we afford them? What are the implications of New Zealand signing up to this with its industries in support? Do we want to be known for developing industries that are part of a military-industrial complex? It may make people look at Rocket Lab and some of the others in a rather different light. I note that there is now a group of New Zealand companies that are coming out for AUKUS because they see the business opportunities. Well, is this really where we want to be? That we go down that track because there might be some dollars in it. And frankly, the few dollars you might pick up from tech companies prepared to go down the military route is nothing compared to the potential loss of export markets in China if China takes huge offence at this.
You've seen that, and I was at a speech by the Minister Todd McClay 2 weeks ago where he talked about doubling exports for New Zealand and it's going to China on steroids, but it just doesn't add up with the right hand, left hand. It seems the government's saying one thing with the right hand, the other in the left, and there's no sort of middle point between the two. So the debate certainly needs to keep on happening. I have one more question on that before perhaps we start to wrap up, because I know we're short on time. I just think that idea, like invoking ANZUS, the language, the officialdom, there is no public mandate to sort of move forward here. So how has this come about in a small, hopefully functioning democracy like New Zealand, where officials are sort of leading us up this perhaps primrose path without public debate? How can this even happen in this country?
Well, none of this featured in the New Zealand election campaign.
Yeah.
When people voted for a change of government, they had no idea that there would be a radical change in the posture of New Zealand foreign policy. And there's something profoundly undemocratic about that. What I learned from my political experience was that saying one thing and doing another in the end has a devastating impact on you. I was a junior member of the Labour caucus when we went to government in 1984. People did not know Rogernomics was about to happen. To be honest, we didn't. Taken by surprise, and there was a long-term cost to that. And as leader of the opposition in the 90s, I had to, basically turn us back from the course that has put us on and re-establish Labour as a credible social democratic party that could win an election. And then my mantra was, say what you mean and mean what you say. Don't overpromise, over-deliver. Yeah. So we're in a situation now where the government is doing things that people were never told about. And, it might not, ring bells initially, but over time, these breaches of trust become very corrosive, A, for the government's political standing, but B, also for trust of the system. And I remember by 1999, when we were coming to the end of 9 years in government, New Zealanders didn't really believe anyone anymore. And you had to say, look, I'm not going to do things I said I wouldn't. I'm going to do these things that I'll say I'll do. And, it was almost like they had to take you on trust because their trust had been let down so badly before. So that's the territory we're in, I think.
Yes. Well, I'll hand over to Matty to start wrapping things up. Yeah.
So we discussed you're a member of the Elders founded by Nelson Mandela, and who said it always seems impossible until it is done. So what seems impossible today, which can be done according to you?
Well, a peace agreement between Israel and Palestine. And, look, we all know the obstacles. The Israeli public seems in no mood for this at the moment, and nor are we seeing in the wings the sort of leadership that might stare that down and say, hand on heart, I've got to tell you, people of my country, that we're on a doomed course unless we change. Yitzhak Rabin was brave enough to do that in signing the Oslo Accords. He was then assassinated by an extremist in Israel, which was tragic. General Sharon, who became Prime Minister, was brave enough to say, I've got to withdraw from the occupied Gazan territory. And, I think had more withdrawal and a deal in sight before he was tragically struck down by a debilitating stroke and never spoke or acted again. So, but, we have to live in hope that there will come leadership that can contemplate that. I think with that sea change in Israel, you would see a Palestinian leadership that can negotiate. The leader many look to has been in jail for years, Marwan Barghouti, and we're told that he is someone who could bring together all the factions under the PLO umbrella. And I guess that's why he continues to be detained, because if you have a regime in Israel that's not interested in peace, you don't want a peacemaker running a PLO. But, it seems impossible, but with all the, actors coming together, the US, the Europeans, the Arab states, whoever, let's not overlook the significance of China also as a broker in these kinds of things. Maybe it can happen. And if it doesn't, we know the alternative. More of what we've seen over not just the period since 7 October, but actually for decades.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Helen Clark. It's been a huge privilege to have you with us at Diplosphere.
Yes, and would love if you want to say a few words about the foundation as well and some of your hopes with it over the next few years. Please feel free. If we missed anything that you'd like to point out, let us know. Yeah.
Well, perhaps the last word on the foundation. It was actually established by my husband. I'm a patron, and we've had it obviously professionally run by two exceptionally talented mid-career people, both out of foreign affairs, and there's really been a range of terrific reports published on policy issues that are important to New Zealand and need and can be addressed by both parties in a sensible way if there's a will. It was good to see Chris Bishop embrace the infrastructure report, for example. And I think we need much more cross-party dialogue on infrastructure. As well as the quality reports and briefings, we have done a lot of webinars. And they not just around the issues of the reports, but obviously we do quite a bit on foreign policy because I've got a big interest in that. And there's a Kiwi constituency that wants to know and cares. And next week I'll be doing a webinar with Peter Bale, journalist, and I'll be talking about what came out of the UN General Assembly and what the chatter there was. So I like to think we're performing a public interest function. And of course we welcome members if anyone has the energy or interest to go to the website.
That's great. And we'd love to continue collaborating with you. And I have a couple of ideas, perhaps. I'll send in an email afterwards regarding specifically the AUKUS debate and how we can sort of promote that debate in the country. But do realize that our time is now at an end. But thank you very much again from the whole O'Brien family and from the
Let's do it again.
Let's do it again. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Well.
Yeah, bye now.
Thank you, Anno.
And upcoming at Diplosphere, you'll see these events. We have Trump 2.0 versus Harris 1.0. How should New Zealand prepare? Then, the worldly women of Wellington through the eyes of Australia, India, Turkey, Argentina, and Ireland. Join us at Diplosphere.